All right, so Trump stays on the ballot. Whoever is creating these images for the Daily Show has the same amount of Photoshop skills as I do, because I could do this just as well. I don't know what to tell y'all about that. Kind of wacky. I should get paid.
My name is John Stewart. We got a hell of a show for you tonight. I'm going to try this one. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody for such kind words about my dog Dipper. It truly meant a lot to me, and I took great comfort in it. But before we do anything, breaking news.
Broken news.
CNN breaking news.
We begin with the breaking news this morning. The United States Supreme Court ruling that former President Donald Trump cannot be removed from any state's ballot for his actions on January 6th.
I didn't know Wolf Blitzer was still on TV, man. I have no reason to watch CNN. I also don't have cable, so I have no desire to pull up CNN on YouTube, which is how I primarily watch the news and watch what's going on, because every news outlet has a CNN channel now. But yeah, this guy's still on TV. Jesus Christ.
I think the real breaking news here, pipe down. They know better than the Supreme Court. In all my years of law school, I couldn't believe the arguments. I think the real breaking news here is Wolf Blitzer and I appear to be merging. We are becoming one.
Dude, those are some thick-ass lenses, man.
By the way, the Supreme Court,
Getting older.
9-0. The ruling was let Donnie cook. So, let that be.
You can't take him off the ballot. He's the president, he was the president, and then there was a whatever thing, election denial, and he's still president, but he's not president, but we want to vote him back in to be president, even though the presidents can only serve two terms, and nobody's made a change to that rule. So whatever logic is going on here in QAnon Republicans' heads.
Listen to all you out there who might be thinking about subverting the Constitution in a presidential election. You go, boy. For more on the Supreme Court's ruling, we turn to our own Desi Leidick live. Thank you for joining us down there tonight. I warned you before that you do your report. Audience filled with law students. So, Desi, Democrats have to be disappointed in this ruling.
Yes, Democrats are doing more shower crying than normal today, John.
What?
But they are still confident that a conviction in the January 6th trial can keep Trump out of the White House.
But that's seemingly not likely going to happen before.
I think that's what we've been saying this whole time, that, every time the Libbers have been celebrating their one wins of, we got him this time. He's arrested. He's going to be in prison forever. Good. I hope, Rufus doesn't give him too harsh of a time in prison. All this stupid shit that people have been saying. It's like, none of it has stuck. None of it has made a difference as far as Trump's run for the presidency again. If you recall, was it like a year or two ago? He looked. I know it was a year ago that he announced his run again. The dude looked tired. He looked like he was just miserable. Like he didn't want to be on stage. He didn't have the oomph. But he was the first one to announce way early that he was running for president again. And it was about 2 years into Biden's presidency. Yeah, about 2 years in. Or a little bit after that. But I think things at that point in time were going okay for Biden. But as far as the idea of bringing Trump back, I think everybody was very much against it. The events that have played out since then, it's been the everything's coming up Milhouse, but for Trump, right? So Biden couldn't look worse than he does today. So it's the perfect time for a new Trump presidency, essentially.
Right, but fortunately Trump has 3 other criminal trials coming up. One of those has to be a conviction, so Democrats are optimistic.
One of them.
But Trump can still be president if he's convicted. None of the cases would stop that.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up, John. Democrats say if none of these cases go their way, there is still another avenue to pursue.
The getting more votes scenario.
They're not there yet. They were going to lay Reese's Pieces out in a trail that leads into a golden tent labeled Mar-a-Lago that can only be zipped from the outside. Or they discussed making him the next Golden Bachelor. Once he's surrounded by women his own age, Democrats believe he will spontaneously combust.
I think that idea would probably work best.
I still think the more votes...
Democrats find a witch. The witch turns Donald Trump into a bird. The bird isn't there on Election Day, having already migrated to a warmer climate.
Desi, the election's obviously tight. The battleground states are going to be difficult, but clearly there is a path to victory for Democrats, even if narrow.
Oh, yes. You're talking about sending Trump an Apple Vision Pro preloaded with porn, so he'll be too busy masturbating to campaign.
That can work out.
That's disgusting. Damn it, Desi, you're never coming on the show ever again. I'm going to avoid everything she ever says. But yeah, the Supreme Court ruled that Trump can stay on the ballot because what they didn't explain, I don't think they mentioned it there, but that the rule of being part of an insurrection doesn't apply to a federal election. So if you are part of the federal, or if you're running for a federal seat, a position, then that rule doesn't apply to you. So yeah, it only applies to others, whatever that might be. This video just came out today, 14 hours ago, and it is from Vox saying why U.S. elections only give you two choices. Obviously, our choices here, as we have said as I have said previously, is that we kind of have our 100% Hitler, and we have our choice of 99% Hitler that is currently funding the genocide, right? That kind of sucks. I would say that's bad. That's bad. Don't do that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that want to argue that we are not, in fact, funding a genocide currently, because that would look bad for everybody's favorite grandpa. And nobody wants our favorite grandpa to look bad. We want the other dumb, ugly grandpa to look bad. So those are our choices there. And unfortunately, those are our only choices as far as what it looks like. Now, if you voted yesterday or the previous week, then you would have seen that, yeah, there are more choices. But in choosing those choices, it's really kind of pointless. Like, you could vote for Marianne Williamson or Dean Phillips or whatever other random person that was running for the Democratic Party, just as much as you could have voted for whoever the hell was running against Trump. I think there was uncommitted in some sections in some states, and then there were your Senate seats and everything else that's going to be on the ballot in November. It always seems like when you vote for those other people, they just don't win. Why is this? So I think Vox posed that question here. Is this it? No, I gotta rewind it.
The person who gets the most votes wins.
Right.
Let's talk about this.
Theoretically.
In the U.S., we basically have two choices in elections. And listen, it's not going amazing.
Government shutdown.
Split Congress. Great divide.
Cannot agree.
Too polarized. Big majorities don't want either one of them running.
Big majorities of us actually don't want the two-party system at all. We want more options. But a lot of the time, we actually do have more options. It's just that when it comes time to vote for them, we mostly don't. We kind of can't. In our system, voting for a third party helps the party you least agree with. It's just a protest vote. But there's a way we could make it more than that. We just need to take a closer look at this. New England, the northeastern region of the US. About 15 million people live here. These 6 states send 21 representatives to Congress. And in the 2022 congressional elections, 36% of voters here voted for Republicans. But none of this region's 21 representatives are Republicans.
It means that the perspective of the New England Republicans, who have historically been fiscally conservative and more socially progressive, is not reflected in Congress.
This is because of the way we elect representatives to Congress, where every representative comes from a different district. Each district holds its own election, and in each election, the person who gets the most votes wins.
Well, that party won the district. Why would you have any other representation, right?
These are winner-take-all elections, and they produce this result all over the country. Take the state of Oklahoma. Oklahoma has 5 congressional districts. It votes 1/3 Democratic. It has no Democratic representatives. Before we start blaming gerrymandering for this, in other words, the shape of these districts, in Massachusetts, which I admit does look kind of gerrymandered, a group of independent mapmakers looked at this situation, and they tried to draw new district maps that would give Republicans some representation here. But they found that though there are more ways of building a districting plan than particles in the galaxy, every single one would produce a 9-0 Democratic delegation.
So yeah, when you have a heavily Democratic state, or when you have a state that's heavily one party, then of course you're going to end up with the majority of the seats, if not all of them, being from that one party. So what does that give representation to, though, for the people that are part of society but are not part of that party? It really, the two-party system, when you look at it that way, it kind of breaks the idea that, you know, we're all one united nation, because you really don't have a voice. You don't have a say in what is going on if you are not part of that party. So I do agree that kind of sucks. If you don't want to, example, vote for 99% Hitler or 100% Hitler, then you have no choice. You really have nothing that you are offered. So what is there for you to do other than, I guess, move? But move where? And then that further brings more division amongst the crowd and amongst the people that are of voting age.
And now imagine if in every single House race, there was also a really popular third party getting 25% of the vote in every district in the country. That party would earn 0 seats in Congress.
0.
If you ask yourself, why haven't you voted for a third party? Most of the time is, well, they don't really have a chance. Our system, by its very nature, precludes political competition.
Telling me there's not a chance.
But most democracies don't actually work this way.
What?
In 2021, a German center-right party called the Free Democratic Party won about 90 seats in Germany's parliament. German federal elections have about 300 constituencies that work sort of like America's districts, with each one electing a single representative. And out of every one of those races, the Free Democratic Party did not win a single one. But Germany uses a form of what is called proportional representation.
Proportional representation means that a share of votes gets you a share of seats.
These are 4 common types of proportional representation. And one way to understand
now,
each of them is,
what
are you voting
are
for
these?
a person, or are you voting for...
What is this? Some type of participation trophy here? No, you gotta win it all. No participation trophies ever.
So at one end of that spectrum, in a closed list system, like they use in Spain, for example, you might not even vote for a candidate. You just vote for a party. Each party wins some percentage of the vote, and those percentages each translate into a certain number of seats. The people who fill those seats come off of each party's list, so voters don't get to choose those candidates. That's the closed part. But there are also open list systems, which are maybe the most common, used in places like Finland, Belgium, Denmark. A standard version of this is you vote for a person, and your vote counts towards a larger party total, sort of like we saw before, determining how many seats each party gets. But in open list, you do choose the candidates. The seats go to the people in each party who got the most votes.
Right.
Germany uses a system called mixed member proportional. Mixed because in their system you cast 2 votes for a person and for a party. Each district elects one person, and those people fill some of the seats in parliament. But the rest of the seats are filled by looking at the party vote, and then doling the remaining seats out to the parties until the end product is proportional to the party vote. And the last one we'll look at is the one that Ireland uses to elect its legislature. And this is actually a version of something we're already starting to do in some congressional and local races in the US.
Ranked choice.
Ranked choice.
Ranked choice voting.
In ranked choice voting, instead of just voting for one person, you rank multiple candidates. It's a system that encourages you to vote for smaller parties and less established candidates, because if your first choice is unpopular, they use your second choice vote. And that process repeats itself until a certain threshold is reached. On its own, though, ranked choice voting doesn't necessarily make these smaller candidates that much more likely to actually win.
No, not at all.
They will be at a disadvantage in any election that only one person can win. But if you lower the threshold of victory in a ranked choice race, that produces multiple winners, more proportional to the vote. All of these systems have different formulas for turning votes into representation. What they have in common is they all distribute power proportionally, instead of just relying on this. Now, you'll notice we spent the last few minutes talking about Congress and Parliament's legislatures. Presidential elections can definitely be made more fair. That is another video. But they will always, by definition, be single winner elections, most likely to be won by the more established parties. But if Congress is more representative and less polarized, it could change the whole partisan dynamic around.
But then we wouldn't get anything done. I mean, just like we're not getting anything done today by having a Democratic president and then a Republican House and a Democratic, well, it's like a 50-50 split Congress. You know, that's what people say, right? Is like you're not going to get anything done because you don't have enough people to do stuff. Well, what does happen whenever you get a bunch of Republicans in power and in seats and everything? You get a bunch of fascist shit, and that's kind of where we're at right now. And then what happens when you get a bunch of Democrats that control all 3 of the legislative branches? They do nothing. They literally, they even lost Roe. You lost Roe v. Wade in the middle of a super majority of having every single branch in the government. And then when they had the opportunity to codify Roe v. Wade, they didn't do shit. They didn't do shit because that's the strategy of the Democratic Party, right? Strategy of the Democratic Party is to basically dangle the carrot. Their idea is to dangle the carrot and give you something to vote for so you continue to vote for them the next time around. That is the basis of the strategy for the Democratic Party. The strategy for the Republican Party is just do whatever the fuck we want, and our crazy voter base is going to vote for us regardless. Which is why they can have a split of, running Trump and then also having Haley go into Super Tuesday and win a state like Vermont, and then Haley just conceding the next day, which is today, and then the Republican Party just moves ahead, and everybody's going to fall in line. I guarantee you Haley's going to come out and say that she backs Donald Trump because she backs the Republican Party and she's part of the Republican Party and all that bullshit. So that is the Republican Party strategy, is to always be unified in all the crazy shit that they do, because that's what they do classically. They've gone and done of some of the most authoritarian, absolutely dumb, insane laws that we're seeing, like, for example, the whole LGBT thing, the issues that they're attacking with the laws that they're attempting to pass that would apply to like one trans kid in a high school that's on the wrestling team in one particular state. Like, it's just totally irrelevant kind of politics where they do a culture war and they bring up the issue of a culture war, and they platform that so that the Democratic Party has to fight that. Now, you would say, well, how do you keep them from doing that? How do you keep the Republican Party busy so they don't do a bunch of culture war bullshit? I'm going off on a tangent here. But as the Democratic Party, you should be passing comprehensive legislature that keeps the Republican Party in place by keeping them busy to fight the legislature that you're pushing. But instead of the Democratic Party pushing left ideals or even centrist ideals, liberal ideals of assistance for any type of assistance, really, or even alleviating raising the minimum wage. That shit fell apart instantly. As soon as Biden was in presidency, he's like, we're going to raise the minimum wage. And then it fell apart somewhere along the way. And he was like, oh, well, we're not going to raise the minimum wage. Never mind. Fuck it. And then he goes and raises the minimum wage for federal employees only, which affects 0.3% of the population in the United States. It's just dumb shit. So it's just posturing. And so either you posture or you dangle the carrot when you're the Democratic Party and you're in charge. It gives you no progress on the issues that you want to see passed. And that's kind of, that is where we're at right now. There's a lot of issues that we're all very aware of, and nothing is being done about them. And what we get told is, oh, make sure you vote in November because then we're going to take care of the issues. It's bullshit. It's total bullshit.
The presidency.
Right now, if the president wants to pass a law, he or she, with rare exceptions, needs both Democrats and Republican Party support. But if there were 3 or 4 or 5 parties in Congress, that would open up far more coalitional possibilities and combinations to pass laws.
So that would force parties to work together. For example, we have like the Libertarian Party and the Green Party that really might have seats in a few random spots across the nation. But in reality, nobody cares to work with them because there's no need to work with them. When you have people that claim to be or that people label as leftists, like Bernie Sanders and Jill Stein and all those other people, they're still part of the Democratic Party, but they're called, the fringe of the Democratic Party. They do that so they fall in line with the Democratic Party. Once people fall in line with the Democratic Party, then they have to listen to whatever the Democratic Party states. So that's why you see people like Bernie not really coming out against what was happening or what is happening in Gaza, what has been happening in Gaza, what has been happening in Palestine. You really don't see those people that are far left on the fringe making those comments, because otherwise they'll get whipped by their Democratic leaders.
The key to making this happen will be taking these single winner elections that we use to elect Congress and replacing them with multi-winner elections that pick, say, 3 to 5 people to represent a district. For example, Oklahoma, now 5 congressional districts, could act as a single district, holding an election that 5 people can win. It would still mostly be represented by Republicans, just not exclusively. Another option is that we could keep many of our current districts and just make Congress...
See, that would be ideal, but the problem with this is if you're the Republican Party or if you're the Democratic Party, for example, you're going to say, nah, I'm not going to give up 2 seats to these other guys. Why am I going to do that? They lost. I'm not going to change anything. Why would I change that? It doesn't make any sense. And that's how you know we're not really a democracy. The United States is not really a democracy. It's really, I mean, it is the dictatorship of a two-party system that both lean to the right. So where are we? Where are we right now?
Exclusively. Another option is that we could keep many of our current districts and just make Congress bigger, so use each district to elect more representatives. But okay, how do we actually do any of this? Federal law currently says that no congressional district can elect more than one representative. So to make Congress more representative, that is what we'll need to change. But that change needs to be made by Congress.
When the country is struggling,
Therein lies the
we
problem.
agree on small things. It can feel really unthinkable, but then there are plenty of indicators that being a member of Congress is pretty miserable these days. Changing the system would let members focus on the reasons they ran for Congress in the first place, serving their community, making sure they get things done.
But there are other ways to change things too. The states each choose how their own state legislatures get elected. Cities choose how their city councils get elected, and the hurdles to changing those are much, much lower.
The more experiments we can try, the more different forms of proportional representation we can implement in the United States, I think the better ultimately our democracy will be.
This rule feels really simple, but that simplicity, it hides a lot of problems.
It does.
We're one of the oldest, if not the oldest democracy in the world, right? All these different other democracies, most of the world's democracies, are using a system that's better. We just need to update our system.
Yeah, we just need to update our system. You're literally prying teeth, man. You're pulling
Thanks
teeth.
for watching. One really important way to be able to continue making videos.
I don't get paid for this, dude. But yeah, you're pulling teeth. So we go through and we see, how do these people get affected here? Like, what does Whoopi have to say about it?
Of these uncommitted voters be and have in the general election. I personally don't know, but I have to tell you that you're in danger of seeming like a one-issue voter. And that's, I'm pretty sure, not where people are at.
So much wrong and so much proof that there is still a disconnect for people to be saying that those who are using Palestine as their compass for how they're going to vote in this next election becoming
She's really
people who
quiet.
are single issue voters.
Get a
Aside from
microphone.
the fact that Democrats are
So what Whoopi's talking about there is she's basically saying that people that are calling for a ceasefire are single issue voters. That's the dumbest thing that you can say about people that are calling for a ceasefire. I think it's a multifaceted. If you are doing that, I think Whoopi doesn't comprehend what all is involved for somebody to finally come to the conclusion that the United States needs to call for a ceasefire, or that should be calling for a ceasefire. But Whoopi's a capitalist, millionaire, multimillionaire, on a TV show where she gets paid to talk, and is directed by other people that are funded by multimillionaires, that are funded by multimillionaire, if not billionaire conglomerate companies. So she will always push the idea that these people just don't know what they're talking about.
Middle East. We pay to keep that baby alive. That is an American taxation
Right.
issue. We pay to drop those bombs on babies in Gaza and their
she's
families.
absolutely right.
We send military personnel to drop those bombs on Palestinian babies and their families. This is an American military issue. This is a military complex issue. Americans who visit Palestine are dying at the hands of the Israeli military. And
Absolutely true.
police. They are being run over by tanks. They are being shot and killed at checkpoints. They are being kidnapped from their homes and held hostage where no one knows where they are. That is an American security issue. International security issue.
Yeah, it's American, Palestinian Americans. So that's why it's not being brought up. And it's not in the news. Not often. Not as often as it's actually happening. Palestinian Americans are actually being killed in the West Bank. Palestinian Americans are being arrested and disappeared, and nothing's really being talked about there.
The entirety of Gaza's healthcare system. This is a healthcare issue. We have now created a situation where women are giving birth without anesthetics. They're having C-sections in dirty tents without anesthetics.
Jesus
they have no access
Christ.
to sanitary napkins or menstruation care for their menstrual cycles. This is now a women's healthcare issue. This is a reproductive issue that we have a part to play in. It is our money. We are funding the entirety of this genocide. Instead of that money being used here at home, where we could get people off the streets and into homes, we can get people free healthcare, we can get people free education, we're sending it there to bomb people, to kill people.
Right.
That is an American issue. Americans are being criminalized for protesting in favor of Palestine. They are being penalized for opposing a genocide that we are funding. That is an infringement on our amendment rights. That's a free speech issue. That's a right to protest issue. Across the board, whatever you choose to vote for, whatever you think is important to you when it comes to voting, Palestine is a part of all of it. So no, this isn't a single issue type of vote. But even if it was, I feel like opposing genocide is a pretty good single reason.
The point here is Biden heard everyone. He gets it. The thing he's doing is not reverse electing himself by saying, what do you want? I'm going to go do that. Some of it is, I know what's right here, and I'm going to stand true to that, even in an election year, and I love him for it.
And I love him for it. Biden never backing down from supporting genocide. Got it.
Yes, that is absolutely the job of the president. You do what the people who put you in power at your job.
And that is kind of the problem that we're seeing with these politicians, because they ask for your vote, and then once they get it, they don't give a shit about you. We're seeing that voting only works to get people elected, and then once they're elected, our issues be damned. They will take priority and tell us what we need to be doing, rather than them addressing the issues that we brought them in there for. That is a major problem in the United States.
One side dying. It's Palestinians who are...
Doesn't understand that there's carnage on both sides is...
Hold on, what?
About the UN.
I hate...
have something to say.
His hands and doesn't understand that there's carnage on both sides is...
There isn't carnage on both sides.
Yeah, there's not carnage on both sides at all.
Donald Trump is not an alternative for the Arab American community. They're not bringing back the Muslim ban. It is an absolute absurdity.
This is gaslighting, because they don't care about Arab and Muslim lives in our own...
I'm sure this video is great on headphones. I'm sorry, dude. But yeah, the idea of the argument that, oh, well, Donald Trump's going to come in here and he's going to, ban Muslims and it's going to be worse. And if you think Palestinians are dying right now, then these theoretical Palestinians that will die under the hand of Donald Trump, wow, they're going to die just as badly as the ones that are dying right now, the 30,000 that have died right now. Imagine if it was imagine if they what's your argument? Like, really, what is your argument there that Trump's going to come in and make it worse? Like, it's already bad, man. It's already bad. Like, Trump's going to come in and make the border stuff worse. Like, that's already bad. People are still locked up. People are being held for just coming into the country. People are being deported rather than being processed and being allowed into the country and having their having their right to wait here and be in the country and go through their court date and whatnot to seek asylum. These things are already happening today. I mean, shit. What was the other thing that happened today? Actually, hold on, you chill there.
Of what community is or means. This is not an endorsement for anyone.
Go to activities and then go down a little bit. This shit's happening today. So here you have the National Guard and police checking bags at Grand Central Subway Station in New York City. Earlier today, Governor Hochul announced deployment of National Guard and state police in New York City subways after violent crime. Whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean. So this is happening today, right now. Like, this happened earlier today, but still, National Guard being deployed on its own citizens that are doing nothing other than riding the fucking subway, man. Like, where are we right now? Where are we right now as a nation? We're completely lost. We're totally lost in everything that's going on. But finish this video.
To voting for someone who is actively murdering our families in our own homeland over some theoretical fear that we've actually already lived through proves that they have absolutely zero sense of what community is or means.
Right.
This is not an endorsement for anyone, but this is absolutely a reminder that both of those candidates are fascists. Just because these people don't have the balls to vote with their conscience, which is something that I absolutely did not have the galls to do last election, but I absolutely have it now, doesn't mean that you don't have them. Forgot to address this part.
Joe Biden doesn't run Israel.
Yeah.
He doesn't run Israel.
He doesn't run Israel.
You're right. It's actually the other way around.
Well, AIPAC runs Joe Biden. Jesus Christ, TikTok. I really hate it when they do that.
They don't care.
I wish there was like a timer or something before the TikTok bloop came up. But yeah, things aren't going well here. So the other thing is, you know, what happens when you do have ranked choice voting? You end up with people manipulating the ranked choice voting in, for example, in California, where Adam Schiff went and basically promoted the Republican candidate for free. Well, for free for the Republican candidate, but he donated a bunch of money to mention him in his commercials and whatnot, and make sure that, you know, people know whoever the hell this guy is, or was. We know who he is now. But you know, this is something that the Democratic Party does and does often. There was a very significant time that this happened in 2016 also, which is kind of crazy, and call me a conspiracy theorist, but no, it's actually true. But so what is this that I'm talking about right now? It's called the Pied Piper strategy, and essentially I'll let the videos talk.
First statewide TV ad of the California Senate race to feature Steve
Jesus
Garvey.
Christ, dude. Do I have no freaking...
Is out, but it's not done by Steve Garvey's campaign. They don't have enough money to do that. Instead,
let me rewind
first
that.
statewide TV ad of the California Senate race to feature Steve Garvey is out.
A statewide TV ad that features Steve Garvey. Not Steve Harvey, Steve Garvey, the guy that is the Republican candidate, really wasn't the Republican candidate for California. He was really just kind of a Republican candidate for California. But since that seat is open, because, you know, Dianne Feinstein's, I think she's dead. She's dead, right? She looked like she was dying, but she's dead. Excuse me. That was rude. But rather than Schiff going up against Katie Porter in November, because that's the way the elections go in California, is if the Republican Party candidate is not strong enough and doesn't get there in ranked choice voting in the primaries, then you won't see that person in November. Come November, it'll be, for example, if it was both two Republican candidates that got the most votes, then you would see those two. Same. This is kind of the system that they're talking about in the Vox video, where you should see a third party, but you don't. You don't, because of these types of tactics.
It's not done by Steve Garvey's campaign. They don't have enough money to do that. Instead, it is by Congressman Adam Schiff.
All right, hold on. What videos did I just close? I just closed a couple things. You know why elections only give you two choices. All right, cool.
Two leading candidates for Senate, two very different visions for California. Steve Garvey, the leading Republican, is too conservative for California. He voted for Trump twice and supported Republicans for years, including far-right conservatives.
Okay, so if you saw that part of the video, or if you saw that part of the ad, as a Republican, you're going to be like, oh, this guy voted for Trump twice. This is my guy. I'm going to do that. He's a little loony on the far right, but you know what? He probably supports January 6th, and, you know, by golly, I support January 6th too. Hell yeah, brother, let's get him in there.
For Trump twice and supported Republicans for years, including far-right conservatives.
Schiff's ad, likely designed to bolster Garvey with Republican voters.
Right.
Most political
That's what that
experts
does.
believe Schiff would have a much easier time defeating the former baseball player in November than he would defeating fellow Democrat Katie Porter. It's a similar tactic Gavin used in his race against John Cox and Rob Bonta used to lift up Eric Early in the California Attorney General's race. Joining us now is the Congresswoman from Irvine, Senate candidate Katie Porter. Congresswoman,
Who
I know
lost
you're fired up
yesterday.
about this. What's your reaction?
This is from about a month ago, I
This
think.
election is about Californians
February 1st.
choosing their next senator. And I think that instead of playing cynical political games and trying to take that choice away, we should be focusing on communicating directly with voters about what we're going to get done for California.
You think Adam Schiff is scared to run against you?
Well, I will tell you that Mr. Schiff has talked a lot,
like it.
and he's this, self-described defender of democracy. We have a lot of races on the line in California, and he's spending millions of dollars here to lift up a Republican in the hope of having a non-competitive race all the way through to November. So I think this race is about Californians making their own choice, and I think it's important for Californians to know that this is a decision that's going to be up to them. They should see through these kind of cynical political games, these kinds of strategies suggested by consultants, and voters should make their own choice.
Schiff's team released the following statement to us when we asked for their response. It says, quote, "No one in this race has fought harder than Adam when it comes to protecting our democracy, our economy, and our planet. Steve Garvey will be a rubber stamp for Donald Trump's extreme agenda. If elected, California voters deserve to know the differences between the two."
Why even mention them if you don't want them to be running? in a race where they're not even relevant, where it would have been Katie Porter and Schiff if this guy wasn't mentioned at all. Why even mention them? Why even promote them is the problem. And that's a strategy, again, the Pied Piper strategy.
Top polling candidates, although all the recent polls seem to show you and Garvey tied. He also points to a 2018 ad that you ran when you were running for Congress for the first time, focusing on the Republican incumbent at the time, Mimi Walters, over the rest of the field, because you were running against other Democrats at the time. Here's that ad.
Mimi Walters voted to defund Planned Parenthood and ban a woman's right to choose. And Walters voted with Donald Trump 98% of the time. Then there's Katie Porter, consumer protection attorney, mother of 3.
I'll stand with Orange County women and families 100% of the time.
Obviously,
guilty.
Walters was an incumbent, so it's a little different, but that does seem similar, doesn't it?
Look, I think there are important differences. We all knew that Walters was going to be on the ballot. She had won the prior election by something like 18 points. And I think you see in Mr. Schiff's statement, disappointingly, an effort to say that there are only 2 top polling candidates. You yourself, Alex, know that the polls have shown a very close race here. It's a very competitive primary. Barbara Lee, me, Garvey, and Mr. Schiff. There are 4 of us who are running really strong campaigns, and it's up to voters to choose who they want to represent them.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I mean, all the recent polls, including the one out today, show you and Garvey in a back and forth, basically statistical dead heat. So to say it's just the top 2 is just factually inaccurate at this point.
It's factually inaccurate.
Yeah.
And I think that's where this is disappointing, and that's where cynicism about Washington comes from. I hear this over and over again. People want to know the truth. They want the facts. And so trying to eliminate, we only have 25 women senators. California is at risk of not being represented by a woman for the first time in 30 years. to erase that, to erase the efforts of a strong competitive woman candidate in this race. It's disappointing, I think, and I think voters can judge for themselves what's at stake there.
One of the big differences between the two of you is over the issue of earmarks. Earmarks, for people that don't know, are basically where members of Congress can request money for a specific project in their district. You say that that's rife for corruption. You don't think that that should go
Seems
forward.
like it.
Adam Schiff does embrace earmarks. Here's what he said last week on our political show, The Issue Is.
Any senator who says, I'm not going to do that, when every other senator in the country is saying basically, I'd rather that money go to New York, I'd rather go to Ted Cruz in Texas, I'd rather go anywhere but California.
What a slime ball, man.
What do you say to that?
Disappointingly, Alex, Representative Schiff has his facts wrong again. Ted Cruz doesn't even participate in the earmark process, and neither do some of the Democratic senators. Here's the fact, and people can judge for themselves. Senator Shelby from Alabama took home almost twice what our California senators did. Senator Graham from South Carolina took home $100 million more than either one of our California senators. We need to have a system that reflects California's size and our needs, and a system that's more about letting politicians get their name on projects, go to award ceremonies, cut ribbons,
Both of
give
these
away
parties
things
suck.
to people who have supported them.
They fucking suck.
That's the opposite of really fighting for the entire state of California, advocating for California's biggest challenges like housing and climate, which is what I've been focused on.
Well, voting starts real soon.
Voting's over, and you lost because of these stupid ass fucking tactics. This is just all right. So yeah, we didn't really hear enough about Steve Garvey, whoever the hell this guy is. They call him far right. They talk shit about him. He used to be a baseball player. He was an MVP or something in the World Series. Who gives a shit? Anyways, here's a very good video from Second Thought from a year ago. But yeah, why are Democrats funding the far right? Seems like a pretty good question, especially in this voting season that everybody's in.
Except when they don't.
Wait, run that back again.
This episode is brought to you by Audible.
This is Republican State Senator Doug Mastriano. He's the Republican who's ahead in the polls for governor.
Earlier this year, Democrat Josh Shapiro spent $840,000 on this ad for far-right Republican candidate Doug Mastriano.
$840,000? I would like to know how much Schiff spent promoting fucking Garvey, dude. Because if that's what it is, that was a statewide, in California, commercial that he was running. Statewide. That's got to cost a lot of money. It's got to be around that ballpark.
No.
He wants to end vote by mail, and he led the fight to audit the 2020 election.
In June, the Democratic Colorado PAC funded this ad for far-right candidate Ron Hanks. And you better believe that back in May, the Democratic Governors Association ran this ad for the far-right Republican Darren Bailey. Before I explain what's going on, look at this ad. This one was funded by a Nancy Pelosi PAC in California. Try to remember that while you're watching it, because this is what these ads look like in practice.
Same label, so Republicans gotta check the ingredients. David Valadao claims he's Republican. Yet, David Valadao voted to impeach President Trump. Yeah, Valadao voted to impeach Trump. And Republican Chris Matisse, a true conservative, 100...
Oh, wait. I'll be right back. 1 second. How do I mute that? All right, sorry about that. I am back. I don't know what the hell I was talking about.
100% pro-Trump and proud. Pro-Trump Republican Chris Matisse, military veteran, local businessman, or politician David Valadao, who voted to impeach Trump. Republicans, it's time to decide. House Majority PAC is responsible for the content of this ad.
All these ads are essentially the same. They're all targeted at a conservative audience, and they all paint the candidates in the same way, as the most conservative candidate that's closest to Trump. In other words, as the Republican voters' best choice. What the f*** is going on?
What the fuck, dude?
In simple terms, the Democratic Party is literally funding far-right politicians. Not just the opposition, not just any Republican, but the extreme wing of the GOP. If you're new here, allow me to be the first to welcome you to the shining city on a hill and beacon of democracy that is the US. Don't mind the fire. These ads are really, really weird. Not just because one party is funding another, that's already insane. It's the specific kinds of candidates being funded. The kind of candidates Democrats say they hate. If you've been following them for a while, you might remember this clip of Joe Biden talking about how America needed a strong and principled Republican Party.
We need a Republican Party. We need an opposition that's principled and strong.
And it's not just Joe. Nancy Pelosi said the same thing about needing a strong Republican Party earlier this year. She told the press that she was really bummed about the GOP being, quote, hijacked by extremists. But less than 4 months later, she was the one paying for the hijackers' plane tickets. At first, this might look like hypocrisy. Democrats say they want a moderate opposition, but they fund the far right. They say one thing, do another, we, the public, catch them in a lie, and bim bam boom, democracy is saved and we can all go home. But that's actually not what's happening. There is nothing hypocritical about Democrats saying they want a moderate opposition and then funding a far-right challenger. That's because these are actually two sides of the same political strategy coin. A strategy that, as we'll see, not only reveals the class interest of the Democratic Party, but shows us one of the mechanical ways our capitalist society is decaying into fascism. If that sounds dramatic, just wait. I promise you it's not. But let's go from the beginning, and start by explaining why Democrats are funding these candidates in the first place. The first thing to know is that midterms are coming up, and the Democrats are terrified. Biden's numbers are in the trash, and all reliable, funding a war in a foreign country isn't working quite as well as it usually does. There is little hope that Democrats will get a majority again, so they need a way to tilt the odds in their favor, and they've figured out how. Democrats are hoping that by making a bunch of far-right nutjobs win GOP primaries, two things will happen in general elections. One, moderate Republicans will be outraged and vote for a more centrist blue candidate, and two, solidly left-wing voters will also be outraged and vote for the lesser of two evils out of necessity. And the problem is that this strategy has worked for them before. In 2012, another Democrat, Claire McCaskill, spent $1.7 million on ads for the ultra-conservative Todd Aiken, more than Aiken spent himself. The result? Aiken got a boost in the polls as soon as the ads started running, won the GOP primary, and then lost against McCaskill in the general election. This wasn't an accident, and it wasn't even a secret. McCaskill herself said, "There were 3 viable candidates, and Todd Aiken was kind of the weirdest one. I knew he might say some weird things if he were nominated. And he had less money, so we took a poll and figured out what Republican voters would really like about him." She even went on to write this article about it. Democrats fund these campaigns because they win when their opposition are far-right weirdos. Except when they don't.
Yeah, except when they don't.
Funding a far-right candidate and saying they want a moderate opposition are two ways for the Democrats to do the same thing.
So the reason that he says except they don't, and then he shows Trump, is because of a maybe not well-known article. I don't know. I think it should be known a little bit better. But yeah, in 2016, they always wanted Trump. You can say, you know, oh, that's because, and what will happen though is, you know, blue MAGA Democrats will go back and be like, oh, well, the Democratic Party lost because of all you progressives, and you guys don't ever, you know, fall in line and vote with your party when you're supposed to, and you're not good people, and blah, 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 all that bullshit. But in reality, what is happening is the fucking dumbass candidates are doing this shit where inside Team Clinton's year-long struggle to find a strategy against the opponent they were most eager to face. In this article, they talk about how they looked at their odds against people like Cruz and Marco Rubio, who were huge. They had huge advantages when 2016 was coming around. Now that was basically a three-way tie, right? Oh, sorry, there's an ad break. All right, so for the YouTube video people, there was essentially a tie in 2016. And what you read in this article is basically it was supposed to be Jeb Bush. If you ask the Democratic honchos in mid-2015, they're going to tell you that it was going to be Jeb Bush, right? Eventually, they said it was going to be Marco Rubio. But it was never supposed to be Trump. So they never thought that it would be Trump that was going to get the nomination in 2016. Because Trump was an outsider. You know, he ran on that whole outsider thing. But he just wasn't it. He wasn't it for the representative of the Republican Party. You might as well represent the Democratic Party at this point. But here, in an October 31st, 2014 memo, informal confidant and longtime friend mapped out a confidential path for Clinton, which she then forwarded to aides with the note worth discussing elements. They took that. The Republican presidential campaign will begin November 5th. If Jeb Bush doesn't run, there's no valuable establishment candidate. If he does run, he will be subjected to an unprecedented assault, and even from a third party. So Clinton was eager to engage with this guy. She was eager to basically. I think we knew at that point Clinton was a nominee for the Democratic Party. Because even though Bernie was trying to make a run, there's no way in hell the Democratic Party is going to run. Anybody that labels themselves as a Democratic Socialist or a Socialist Democrat or whatever the hell he is, whatever the hell he was going by at that point in time. But in this article, they go through and they talk about, that Bush's economic message for a client has been remarkably strong, getting even half of African Americans and Democrats and 2/3 of Latinos. So Jeb Bush looked good. He looked good against Clinton specifically. So to take Bush down, Clinton's team drew up a plan to pump Trump up. Shortly after her kickoff, top aides organized a strategy call whose agenda included a memo to the Democratic National Committee. This memo is intended to outline the strategy and goals for a potential Hillary Clinton presidential campaign would have regarding the 2016 Republican presidential field, it read. The variety of candidates is a positive here, and many of the lesser known can serve as a cudgel to move the more established candidates further to the right. In this scenario, we don't want to marginalize the more extreme candidates, but make them more Pied Piper candidates who actually represent the mainstream of the Republican Party. Again, acknowledging that the Republican Party is a fringe party in themselves, where they have a lot of racist sentiments and very much anti-LGBT, all of the bigoted stuff. They already knew that at 2016 before they even got Trump the nomination. So in this Pied Piper strategy, they said the Pied Piper candidates include but aren't limited to Ted Cruz, who, as we can see today, is a fringe candidate, Donald Trump, and Ben Carson. Donald Trump at that time was really just known for being on The Apprentice. Yes, he had done a bunch of racist shit, and that was in his history that he tried to bury. But he did the whole what was it, the five the Central Park Five. He put out an entire page saying that they were guilty. They were actually found not guilty. It was I believe it was 5 black kids that he put put out a whole page presser in like the New York Times or whatever newspaper it was, that they were guilty and they deserved to be in prison or whatever. Donald Trump has a lot, and as we know now, since 2016, that he has a lot of racist sentiment. He's pretty much, he is a bigot. He is a bigot. That's why you see a lot of the far right and the the Nazis really admire him, admire who he is, because he's rich, he's a racist piece of shit, he's a bigot, and he's not ashamed of it. Ben Carson, I don't think that would happen, but Ben Carson is also a diehard Republican. Again, this article is, they always wanted Trump from Politico magazine, talking about how Hillary Clinton always wanted to go up against Donald Trump. We need to be elevating the Pied Piper candidates so that they are leaders of the pack and tell the press to take them seriously. So again, at that time, Jeb Bush was huge. I don't know if he had done the whole please clap thing yet, but I'm sure that was coming soon. A lot of people will say that was his downfall. Yeah, that was embarrassing, but what that really did is that really gave Marco Rubio at that time, a boost. And that's really who it should have been. It should have been Marco Rubio. And this goes on to explain, how Clinton's team basically went through and propped up Trump. So I'm glad Hillary is obsessed with one candidate who would be easiest to beat, besides Trump, of course. And so they thought Trump would be a layup. They thought, hey, if we just pose Trump up there and, show everybody how crazy he is, there's no way anybody's going to vote for him. I think you underestimate how racist the United States is by making that kind of statement, because that's essentially what they're saying here in this article, that the Clinton campaign tried to do, and they tried to paint that idea. But the problem is that it caught on too well. So because it caught on too well, the Clinton campaign essentially is responsible for Donald Trump. Bush sucked. I'm glad Hillary is obsessed, right? So who do we have to blame but the fucking Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton for Donald Trump? But then you'll end up with fucking people that'll say, no, this is because the progressives didn't want to vote for Clinton. The Bernie bros didn't want to vote for Clinton. They were mad when statistically, if you go back and look at the people that were voting for Bernie, they actually voted for Clinton en masse. Nobody went and voted for Trump as a fuck you vote. Nobody did that. that just wasn't happening. They either voted for Clinton or they stayed home. That was it. So by promoting Trump, Clinton dug her own grave. And so this goes on and just goes on and on about how Rubio was his profile was crumbling, and essentially when you take down so many establishment candidates, there's going to be that one candidate that's going to come from that. And that's exactly what happened. So Democrats with access to Clinton's ear thought Cruz had a chance to turn his fortunes around once more in southern states. Voted in March. But that doubt was eliminated on Super Tuesday once Trump, like Clinton, took a slate of states as diverse as Massachusetts and Alabama after glowing through South Carolina and Nevada. Clinton's strategist's initial reactions to Trump blazed through the primaries at the time was giddy disbelief, because that's who they wanted. They wanted to go up against Donald Trump. They wanted to go against the nut job. They wanted to, say, hey, look at this crazy guy. And if you remember, Clinton was like, these are the deplorables. Like, these people are not good people. But when she said that, what that meant to the Republican base is that they were all deplorables. And that unified the Republican base even further. So they said, oh, well, I'm not a bad person. Like, well, you vote for bad people, but they took offense to that. And of course, that's going to fuel them further. That's not going to bring people to your side by calling them names like that and being divisive. That's not going to bring people to your side. So that there were multiple mistakes along with not campaigning, and I think it was Michigan and Minnesota that Clinton didn't do. Clinton's slow pivot away from Bernie Sanders and their expensive primary was far from over. Eager to begin the general election, she began speaking against Trump after March 15 primaries, declaring our commander-in-chief has to be able to defend our country, not embarrass it. Well, I mean, that definitely happened, the embarrassment part. But she quickly dialed back the effort when Sanders made it clear that he wasn't going anywhere by kicking off a winning streak the next week. So yeah, I do firmly believe that Bernie Sanders should have gotten the nomination. There were actually issues with the delegates. I think it was in Ohio. I don't remember now. This is all from a long time ago. But yeah, so Clinton found herself fighting Bernie longer than she intended to. So while the ground team and inner circle focused almost entirely on dispatching Sanders, leading Clinton aides started to get more frequent updates on the anti-Trump polling in focus groups that studied most potent lines of attack against the self-described billionaire. Yet they resisted the seething series of entreaties from donors and allies in conference calls and private meetings to have the candidate start directly attacking Trump on the trail. So she would not attack Trump. Wary of appearing to be looking beyond Sanders' challenge and keeping the example of Rubio's demise in mind, Clinton's camp remained terrified by the prospect of a 7-month schoolyard scrap. The longer you can avoid a brawl, said veteran Clinton fundraiser and friend, that guy, referring to the nonstop calls for her to knife Trump early, it's distracting. It takes you into the gutter with him, which she was going to go into the gutter with him anyway. when you what's the saying? When you something with pigs, right? Fool me once, shame on you. Can't fool me again. So while Clinton jumped from caucus state to primary destination, one of her most significant strategic shifts was just starting to be designed back at headquarters. So Clinton's leading strategist firmly insisted that Republicans would not nominate Trump until the moment Cruz bowed out. But Clinton confidants were by that point nonetheless convinced they'd likely have to pair a Barack Obama style ground game. That's what we're not seeing here in 2024. We're not seeing a ground game for Biden. That just isn't happening. They're kind of sitting back and kicking up their legs, and they're like, we got this in the bag. Democratic voters are going to vote Democratic. Ignore what's going on in Gaza. It's not an issue. Just bully the people that are calling for a ceasefire and say that, well, you're not lying. You're not correctly aligned, and you need to think about what Donald Trump is going to do when he comes back into power in 2024, 2025. Think about the 25, whatever that thing is, that's a Christian fascist plan. Think about that. You are going to regret your decision in not voting for Biden. Guilt trip people into it, right? Rather than actually go to the ground, rather than actually concede and actually seek a ceasefire, not just a 6-week ceasefire, and which still hasn't even been agreed to. It's bullshit. Not even going to the ground, not even doing any of this stuff. yeah, they'd likely have to do the ground game with a pricey scorched earth paid advertising campaign in battleground states to overwhelm Trump's television mastery, which that's one thing that Trump did do well, is he presented well on TV, even though he's a dumbass. He knew how to game the TV system. One thing that he was doing was calling into shows. Rather than him going on TV and being interviewed, he was calling into shows, and he would do interviews back to back to back. And that's how he got so popular. Once he saw that the nomination was in reach, he started doing that kind of stuff. And what did that cost? That cost Clinton a lot of media attention. So not only did she bring Donald Trump into play, not only did they pump him up, they essentially unleashed him on the media. And they did nothing to hold him back. All of these things combined, along with everything else that happened, along with him being just a straight up bully and bullying the rest of the Republican Party, like everybody has always wanted to see that, along with him, going through and saying all the racist, just absolutely horrible shit that he can about Hispanic people, questionable things about any other race, just doing crazy shit. Along with all that, like that was just in itself a show that brought him even more attention. It says, okay, so where was I? Clinton's discussions with other Democrats had for months revealed that she believed her path to victory relied on cutting a swath through upper Mississippi and the upper Midwest. A race against Bush or Rubio would make Florida much more difficult and force her to lean more heavily on Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania. But the Democrats' polling showed that Trump's appeal was fundamentally different from what she'd been planning for, requiring a large-scale shift in time and resources between states, something that she didn't do. She didn't spend enough time in a lot of different states, a lot of swing states. So what happened? She lost those swing states, and she still won the popular vote, but she lost the key swing states that were key for the Electoral College win. So she propped up Trump. Again, as this article states, they always wanted Trump. They didn't want to go against establishment Republicans like Jeb Bush, like Marco Rubio. They wanted to go against people like Ted Cruz, who's not even American. I guess he is American, according to stipulations. They wanted to go against the crazies like Donald Trump and Ben Carson. They wanted to use the Pied Piper strategy to show everybody that these people are crazy. All of that backfired. All of that backfired on Clinton. And what happened was she lost by the Electoral College, which I'm a firm believer that needs to be abolished. I don't think it's a good thing. I think we should definitely be going off of the popular vote, which would have given Clinton the win here if we went by popular vote. But we don't. So, good day, sir. You lose. Again, this Pied Piper strategy is something that has been talked about in previous articles and in previous times of voting cycles. It's something that shifted here with Steve Garvey. That's why you're going to see Adam Schiff going against Steve Garvey in the California, I think it's the Senate seat. You just create your own problems by doing this. Give me this story back. But yeah, here's the risky strategy Democrats are using to win elections. When was this published? This was published in 2022. What's a Pied Piper strategy? The strategy takes its name from the medieval German legend about the mysterious piper who arrives in the town of Hamelin which is suffering from the plague spread by rats. In the story, the Piper offers, the Piper goes and, takes all the rats and he leads them out of the town, right? So in politics, a Pied Piper candidate plays a tune for his party's base, and voters dutifully follow him off a cliff. So what Schiff is doing here with Steve Garvey is he's getting Republicans to vote for Steve Garvey, making him the candidate that Schiff's going to go against, which is great if as long as Schiff wins. Now, what happens if Schiff loses and people are like, oh man, we're really going to turn out for Trump this year because, Trump's back, baby, and all the Republicans are going to go vote for him. The problem here is what happens is you end up with a very popular presidential candidate and people go vote down ballot Republican, and you're going to vote in these fucking idiots that are either Nazis or they don't know what the fuck they're doing, like Coach in fucking Alabama or wherever the hell he is, Tommy Tuberville, this guy that was a baseball player that I don't even know if he actually knows politics or not. I don't think he does. There were no credentials that they talked about in here. But you end up platforming these people. And when you platform these people, it creates problems for politics because they either, one, don't know what the fuck they're doing, or two, do know what the fuck they're doing and are the most evil pieces of shit. Or if it's Donald Trump, then you end up with a fucking idiot that doesn't know what the hell he's doing. First of all, didn't expect to win, which you can definitely see on Trump's face whenever he actually won the presidency. And you can see that, and actually Melania's face too, that they didn't even think that they were going to win. And then what happens with Trump is he's a narcissistic piece of shit for at least the first 2 years. Really doesn't know how the game works. By about year 3, I think he started figuring it out. And he was like, what can I do to stay here? And that's really when Trump became the most evil fascist piece of shit. And I think that's around the time that the whole George Floyd protest started happening as well. Which I believe that kind of fueled his anger a little further than it already was. And then him losing to Joe Biden, the weakest bag of bones that you could ever lose to, I think that fueled him even further to go and overthrow the election. God, this can't be written in a movie or anything any better than it is already for the persona that is Donald Trump. You take an evil capitalist pig and you mold him into this resentful, just vile fascist. And this is where we're at right now. But anyways, back to the second thought video about, how Democrats are funding the Republican Party.
But less than 4 months later, she was the one paying for the hijackers' plane tickets.
Oh yeah, sorry. So this is a Nancy Pelosi
she told the press
commercial.
that she was really bummed about the GOP being, quote, hijacked by extremists. But less than 4 months later, she was the one paying for the hijackers' plane tickets. At first, this might look like hypocrisy. Democrats...
Hold on, what did that say there? It said paid for by House Majority PAC, which is Nancy Pelosi's. The HouseMajorityPAC.com, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. House Majority PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
This might look like hypocrisy. Democrats say they want a moderate opposition, but they fund the far right. They say one thing, do another, we, the public, catch them in a lie, and bim bam boom, democracy is saved and we can all go home. But that's actually not what's happening. There is nothing hypocritical about Democrats saying they want a moderate opposition and then funding a far-right challenger. That's because these are actually two sides of the same political strategy coin. A strategy that, as we'll see, not only reveals the class interest of the Democratic Party, but shows us one of the mechanical ways our capitalist society is decaying into fascism. If that sounds dramatic, just wait. I promise you it's not. But let's go from the beginning, and start by explaining why Democrats are funding these candidates in the first place. The first thing to know is that midterms are coming up, and the Democrats are terrified. Biden's numbers are in the trash, and all reliable, funding a war in a foreign country isn't working quite as well as it usually does. There is little hope that Democrats will get...
Well, hold on 1 second. So this is August 2022. Funding a war in another country, when he's talking about that, he was talking about Afghanistan.
And all reliable, funding a war in a foreign country isn't working quite as well as it usually does.
Oh, no, he's talking about Ukraine. Yeah, Ukraine was not going over well. It was also seen as a huge waste of money. I would say there was division within the Democrats as far as support for Ukraine or not support for Ukraine. Personally, I'm not a fan because what we have seen with Ukraine is really us sending them a ton of weapons and then kind of just them getting killed. Ukrainians getting killed. Laws being passed that the men can't leave the country. And then a continuation of war where it basically just turns into a meat grinder is what it is. It's a meat grinder for the Ukrainian people to die. Is what we've turned it into. But hey, great for the economy because we're offloading all of these weapons into Ukraine and Israel. When the warmongering military-industrial complex does that, they're going to turn around and say, "Hey, boss, we're out of bombs. We got to make some more." And then you turn around and Biden passes the largest to-date military spending budget in history.
There is little hope that Democrats will get a majority again, so they need a way to tilt the odds in their favor, and they've figured out how. Democrats are hoping that by making a bunch of far-right nutjobs win GOP primaries, two things will happen in general elections. One, moderate Republicans will be outraged and vote for a more centrist blue candidate, and two, solidly left-wing voters will also be outraged and vote for the lesser of two evils out of necessity. And the problem is that this strategy has worked for them before. In 2012, another Democrat, Claire McCaskill, spent $1.7 million on ads for the ultra-conservative Todd Akin, more than Akin spent himself. The result? Akin got a boost in the polls as soon as the ads started running, won the GOP primary, and then lost against McCaskill in the general election.
So you can't say
this wasn't
work,
an accident, and it wasn't even a secret. McCaskill herself said, "There were three viable candidates, and Todd Akin was kind of the weirdest one. I knew he might say some weird things if he were nominated. And he had less money, so we took a poll and figured out what Republican voters would really like about him." She even went on to write this article about it.
Jesus Christ.
Democrats fund these campaigns.
How I would have gotten away with it if I murdered them.
Because they win when their opposition are far-right weirdos. Except when they don't. Funding a far-right candidate and saying they want a moderate opposition are two ways for the Democrats to do the same thing. To position the Democratic Party as the only reasonable political choice. By saying that the Republicans are being hijacked by extremists and then actively funding that hijacking, the Democrats are creating an image of themselves as the only remaining bastion of democracy. The only way to vote that won't actively tear the country down. At least until the Republicans go, quote-unquote, back to normal. Which Democrats know will never happen.
We've been waiting for that for a decade
on the right being
now.
Represented by the worst guy imaginable, and will actively work to make that the case. Either, as we see here, with direct funding, or more commonly, by pitting themselves only against candidates like Trump. Clinton never campaigned against guys like Jeb Bush. Her opponent was only whoever was the farthest to the right and could make her supporters most upset. She drummed up a radical opposition because it's a much safer strategy than running against someone.
This is also why you never see, even though the primary candidate that a Democrat or a Republican is going against is weaker, you never see them talk about a third party candidate. Because if they were to talk about a third party candidate, that would bring attention to that third party candidate, and that would bring them into the limelight. That would get them more votes come election time. So you don't want to do that. You want to only acknowledge the weakest candidate that you believe you have the best chance of winning against.
One who shared a lot of her ideas.
So for the Democrats, you would not want to talk about somebody in the Green Party or the Libertarian Party. If they were to the left and actually had comprehensive views on something like healthcare for all, or, you know, Social Security, or, you know, controlling the housing market, or, you know, all of these things that have to do with commodities that a lot of other parties are talking about. I mean, even the Party for Socialism and Liberation, I think that's right, PSL. Nobody's talking about those guys either, because they don't want to talk about them. They don't want to plant the idea in your head that there might be a more comprehensive party out there. Because if they were to talk about it, they would legitimize those parties, and people would actually start thinking about something besides the two-party system that we currently have.
But this strategy has a couple different outcomes. It might, as Democrats hope, bring some moderate Republicans to their side and get more blue voters out to the polls. Maybe. But it might completely backfire and their funding will just have gotten more far-right wackos into politics. No one can know for sure what's going to happen come election time. What is guaranteed, though, is that this lesser of two evil strategy allows the Democrats to move further right and still get votes from left-wing voters, and it actively promotes fascism. More ad spots featuring quasi-fascist politicians, brandishing fascist slogans, and actively supporting the president who, so far, has embodied fascism the most, all promote the popularity of fascism in the US. That is
so glad she's going to be irrelevant soon.
At the end of the day, fascism is getting more airtime.
I don't wish her any ill.
Convincing more conservatives.
I'm just glad she's
and
out
the
of
Democrats
politics,
are
there's no
absolutely
need
to
for this
blame.
person to be in politics.
With not the best odds of winning, and with the knowledge that this strategy promotes ultra-conservative politics in America, why would the Democrats run these ads? After all, Democrats aren't fascists. They're liberals. There is a difference. Why are they going with a risky strategy that, even in its best-case scenario, actively makes society worse? There are two explanations.
Why
One,
indeed?
mechanical, at the party level. This strategy is a direct product of the way the Democratic Party is organized. Another, at the societal level. This strategy is the product of how our entire economy is organized. Let's start with that second one. You may have heard the phrase, fascism is capitalism in decay. That sentence is used to say that as capitalism starts failing the people it usually benefits, starts decaying, it concedes strategic ground to fascism in order to survive. It's an idea that gained traction in the 20th century when socialists realized that capitalism wasn't being replaced by socialism like they expected. World War I and the Great Depression, brought on by a global economic crash, didn't lead to socialism replacing capitalism's global hegemony. Instead, reactionary movements started popping up everywhere, most notably in Germany and Italy. Capitalism hadn't been replaced by socialism, it had adapted into something new, fascism. A political economic system that didn't look like capitalism, and that often even gave up on, quote, free markets, but that preserved the private ownership and profits of the capitalist class. The same people were on top, but things looked a little different. Here's how socialists explain something like this happening. As capital concentrates into fewer and more powerful monopolies, as the rate of profit falls, as more and more people are kicked into poverty and those remaining in the workforce are increasingly overworked, the conditions that produce fascism begin to appear. Monopoly capitalism, the inevitable outcome of winner-take-all competition, leads to economic stagnation and crashes. The first victims of this stagnation and these crashes are, of course, the working class, as we saw in the Great Depression, 2008, and with the COVID recession. Millions of people are suddenly thrust into poverty and can't make ends meet. The thing is that within this context, governments are no longer able to rule as they usually do. They have to resort to more direct violence to keep their hold on power. People's demands are no longer brushed away by politicians in assemblies. they're actively resisted with cops on the street.
Right.
For example, when people start demanding to defund the police or for a price freeze on basic necessities. Political stagnation is just no longer an option for capitalist governments now that tens of millions of people's immediate needs aren't being met.
So if we protest, we get tear gas thrown at us. We get beanbags shot at people's faces, literally shooting people's eyes out.
So to preserve that political gridlock that is so stable and profitable, governments get used to scaling up the violence.
So the violence must go up. The beatings will continue until morality improves.
When people need to vote you in to govern, governments need to find a justification for this sudden growth in state violence. And this is where fascism comes in. Fascists usually explain the decay of capitalism not by the inherent flaws of the system, but by its corruption by a small minority. A minority usually separated out from the rest of society along arbitrary lines, like race, ethnicity, or place of birth. Fascists assert that it is these minorities, not the natural tendency for wealth to accumulate into fewer hands under capitalism, that has pushed the masses into misery, and therefore that state violence is legitimate in order to punish those minorities and anyone who defends them or advocates for systemic change. After all, the system is perfect. It's those people that are the problem.
The system is
explain
perfect,
away the
yes.
failure of the system and its sudden uptick in violence with scapegoating. It's as simple as that. Because this kind of narrative is beneficial to established capitalist governments, this struggle for power gets mirrored at the national level. Governments that benefit from capitalism would rather concede to fascism and keep their benefits, rather than allow for socialism to grow in popularity and upset their power and private interests.
How
this
else?
theory of fascism...
How else am I supposed to keep this endless supply of chicken nuggets coming? If Wendy's or McDonald's is not the number one store on every corner of the entire nation, you know, capitalism rules all. How am I supposed to live a comfortable life? Is it worth giving up the comforts of life to make a society better? Fascism and capitalism hand in hand say no.
Is how socialists explain the 20th century. But practically speaking, how does this concession to fascism actually happen? What exactly is it that has to take place for fascism to gain this kind of place in society and government?
Fascists say chicken nuggets for the few. Socialists say chicken nuggets for all. But, you know, we can't have it all equal, so fascism it is, I guess.
This is where the Democratic Party comes in. You probably know that another idea, socialism, has gained traction these past few years. Around 70% of millennials and Gen Z say they are somewhat or extremely likely to vote for a socialist. And nearly a quarter of them believe society would be better if all private property was abolished. Faced with this demographic information, the Democrats have two choices. Either they adopt socialist policies, or they win elections. The thing is, they can't do both, not at a party-wide level. That's because the Democrats aren't just contending with the public's pressure when they run for office. While the public may want socialism, more than ever before, not every Democrat can adopt socialist rhetoric and policies into their program. That's because at the core of every Democrat's strategy is the question of how do you get funding? Average people don't contribute that much to political campaigns. And very wealthy people will not fund a party with policies that threaten their profits. They just won't. Not if that threat starts becoming real. A few socialists in the party is okay, but a party that embraces socialism can't afford to run nearly as many ads.
Right.
That means that Democrats who support socialist policies will have to fight an upstream battle. They'll need to fundraise at a much more grassroots level. They'll have to contend with constant villainization in media institutions owned and operated by some of the wealthiest people on Earth. And they will constantly deal with the pressure of simply existing within a party that is not hospitable to socialist ideas. That doesn't necessarily mean they can't succeed, it just means it's the hardest path to success. With these kinds of challenges, many more Democrats will take the easy win of running against a far-right opponent to try to capture centrist voters. Fascism grows just because it's easier. This kind of system doesn't need anyone to be evil. It doesn't need anyone to lie. Nobody needs to be actively dishonest. Enough people just need to follow the path of least resistance. It is in the material interest of Democrats to not concede any more ground to socialism than is absolutely necessary for their survival. And by comparison, it's much easier to fund and then run against the far right. The more their platform is influenced by the anti-capitalist left, the more likely they are to lose elections. So without trying to make fascism more popular, just by being okay with it happening to win elections, fascism gains traction in our society. This is not the only way fascism takes over, but man is it an effective one. That is why I constantly talk about alternative networks of power on this channel. Why I focus so much on the institutions of our government and how they're constructed. Why I keep telling you to organize, unionize, participate in mutual aid, and study up and disseminate information on alternatives to the capitalist economic model.
True.
The natural tendency of our elected institutions and political parties is to prioritize capitalism, even when it fails most people and starts relying on fascism to survive. Our institutions were built with preserving capitalism in mind, not to be accurate reflections of the public's will, especially when the public turns to socialism. Without building institutions that can resist this natural...
So if there's something that we have seen about capitalism in the last however many years, at least the last century, if not the last 2 to 3 decades, is anytime capitalism is dying and basically has a massive failure, such as the housing crash of 2008, COVID, this other housing bubble that has not popped and probably won't pop at all, we're living through right now, the increase in prices of food, the gradual increase in prices of gas, the huge increase in prices of transportation, all commodities that we need. Those are all issues that just keep on happening. These things that are supposed to be like 1 in 100 years just keep on happening. And what has to happen in order for us to get over that is a little piece of socialism has to be implemented. Like, for example, 2008, the housing market crashed. Everybody was either in foreclosure. I won't say everybody, but there's a good part of people that were in foreclosure, lost their homes. So what needed to happen was, we got to get more people to buy houses. There was the $8,000 incentive for new home buyers. If you were lucky to get that piece of the pie, then that was fantastic. That was $8,000 in cash that you got as a part of your tax return. So they always test the shit out of whatever these profits that are things that they try to pull out of socialism. COVID happened. Nobody could go outside. They started sending checks to people, so people would go spend money. But again, they tested that as well, where you couldn't make over I think it was like $75,000 or $80,000 a year in order to get your $1,400, which Biden still owes me $600. He said he was going to give it to us, and he did not. So there's always these little pieces of socialism that they implement to keep capitalism alive and going, as limp of a dead body as it is, because it's just, I think what he said, capitalism in decline is fascism. So that's basically where we are. We're going through all these one-time events in our lives. We're living through them. And the only way that capitalism stays alive is to implement those little chunks of socialism to keep going. I'm sure there were other events that I missed, but always. And I'm sure we'll see it in the future. It might get to the point where you need a universal basic income for people to just be able to go to work. I think there was an article that I saw earlier today where was it Colorado or somewhere City can't afford to pay workers because rent is too expensive. This was in the news somewhere. Yeah, here you go. A cowboy ski town where high earners can't afford. Give me this back. Hello? 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 Guess not. There we go. Can anything work for me? No? Alright, cool. Can't afford a home, faces a housing battle. Despite offering a salary of $167,000, the city of Steamboat Springs can't find a head of human resources who can afford a place to live in the remote Colorado community, surrounded by ranches and famous for training Olympic athletes. Can't even afford to pay a salary that would actually give somebody enough money to be able to afford to live in the city. That is a problem. That is a major problem. If there's anything that we know about capitalism, is that capitalism unchained will go by the exponential growth model and will eventually lead to such situations as this, if not for certain people, for the majority of our society. Huge problem.
Tendency, this country will comfortably slide into fascism.
Yes.
We can and we must put a stop to it. The US is kind of in a boiling frog scenario. We're not just gonna wake up one day and someone will have flipped the fascism switch. It's a process, and we're already pretty far along. It is so important that we come to terms with that fact and act accordingly. I try my best to learn and understand as much as I can so I can share with others.
Will Donald Trump bring upon the age of fascism in the United States?
I have plenty of time to sit on planes.
Who's to say we're not already there?
One great one that I recently listened to is Michael Parenti's Black Shirt and Dems. It is hands down one of the best works I found that really explains
2024, what a year. Personally, I say the least you can do is vote. That is the very least of an effort that you can do. There's a lot of people in the United States that do not have the capability or the right to vote. It's the very least you can do. Play the game. If you want to play the game better than the people that are playing the game are playing it, then protest, march, call your representatives, be a pest, spread the message, be loud, and make sure that people know what's going on, that people are aware as to where this country currently stands. Because as we stand right now, what we're doing is we're giving weapons to a homicidal, genocidal country that is deliberately using them to kill. And they've already killed over 30,000 people. And that's happening today. Again, that video that I showed of the National Guard in the New York City subways, that's happening today. Kids drowning trying to cross the Rio Grande and get into the United States, even though they might not be doing it legally. They're drowning and dying, while representatives from Texas sit there and watch them drown. That is happening today. People sitting in cages, people being incarcerated, all of that stuff is happening today. If you tell me that fascism isn't occurring in the United States right now, I got some pretty good arguments against that. try not to think about it too much, but it is something that we do need to talk about, and talk about even with the people that are not comfortable talking about it, because a lot of this shit's happening. Anyway, I used to be a pretty big fan of David Muir. I thought he was really good at his reporting. Not so much recently. Anyways, let's see what this actor's got to say today.
As we come on the air, the storm moving up the East Coast. Washington, D.C. to New York City to Boston. The watch is up right now. In New York City tonight, the National Guard being sent into the subway to protect riders. And Nikki Haley dropping out of the presidential race. It's now Biden versus Trump. Where will Nikki Haley's voters go? First tonight, the storm hitting right now, blinding rain for millions, the dangerous evening commute. The watch is now posted from New York City to Boston. Rob Marciano standing by. In New York City tonight, that dramatic move, sending in the National Guard deployed on the subways amid crime. A subway conductor had his throat slashed, another conductor attacked just today. The United flight, the emergency landing, the loud bang shortly after takeoff.
So you're telling me, hold on. You're telling me that the largest police department in the United States, the most expensive police department in the United States, of $5 billion budget, can't keep its own civilians safe? That you have to bring in the National Guard? That's absolutely insane.
Takeoff, the passenger jet then violently shaking. Tonight, Nikki Haley out of the race for president. What President Biden said today to Nikki Haley's supporters. And the high-stakes moment now for Biden in front of the nation tomorrow
How will
night
we go on?
With Donald Trump leading nationally and in the key battlegrounds as well. Tonight, did Russia target President Zelensky? This evening, the Russian missile strike coming within 300 feet of Zelensky. What Ukraine and Russia are now saying, James Longman reporting.
I'm going to say this war is almost over.
Deadly. The Iranian-backed militants firing missiles at commercial ships. At least 3 crew members have been killed, and Martha Raddatz standing by with late reporting tonight. The American mother of 2 who suddenly died, falling ill on a flight home from vacation from the Dominican Republic. What they noticed on the plane. We have breaking news tonight. The verdict just in the Rust movie trial. The armorer charged with the jurors have just decided.
Charged with manslaughter.
Your help tonight at a new report warning about
Which
some
is
acne
essentially the
creams and a
indirect
cancer-causing
being responsible
ingredient
for the
found in
indirect
them.
death of somebody.
What researchers are saying, what the companies are now saying as well.
I
The
guess
famous
would be
song
true.
Hotel California, the sudden move today in the criminal case over that Eagles classic.
They're going to end with that, and I don't care about it.
Tonight, what just happened in court. And the Robin Roberts exclusive, the first look right here tonight with college basketball star Caitlin Clark, who broke the women's scoring record and then the men's scoring record too. What she told Robin.
She told Robin.
From ABC News, this
I'm the highest
is
scoring
World News Tonight
collegiate
with
champion.
David Muir, reporting tonight from Washington.
Also, dude, they got the ska trumpet.
Washington,
I mean,
we have a
that's
verdict
pretty
just
good.
in tonight in the Rust movie trial. Also, the National Guard sent into the New York City subway. But we do
But
begin
Dave,
tonight
you're
with the
looking
storm
a little
moving
too
right
serious,
up the East
man.
Coast at this hour. Heavy rain hitting just as millions drive home. Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia, New York City to Boston. Flash flood alerts for 33 million Americans from New Jersey to New York to New
that sounds like
England.
it sucks. I
Rain
don't really,
through
not
Sunday.
really too concerned about the weather here.
We'll be watching it right here with you. Rob Marciano
You
leading
look
us
wet,
off
bro.
tonight. Rob, thank you. We also, as I mentioned, have breaking news just in tonight. This verdict in the Rust movie trial. The armorer, Hannah Gutierrez, charged. The verdict coming in moments ago. The jury finding her guilty of involuntary manslaughter.
Involuntary manslaughter.
Ola,
Yep.
thank you. Meantime, tonight in New York City, the dramatic move, the National Guard being sent into
There
the
we
New
go.
York City subway to protect riders. Tonight here, New York's Governor Kathy Hochul
Protect
on the crime they're
riders.
seeing on the subway and what they're now doing about it. Aaron Petruski in New York tonight.
Tonight, the National Guard is set to patrol the New York City subway system, a show of force after a series of violent attacks.
I've certainly noticed a difference in crime in subway.
Hold on, Dave said it was to protect riders. What do you mean it's a show of force?
Particularly that even have me as an NYPD employee fearful of my safety.
While crime in the city overall is down, the start of the year has seen a spike in the subways, and the governor says it's giving riders anxiety.
Saying things are getting better doesn't make you feel better, especially when you've just heard about someone being slashed in the throat or thrown onto a subway's tracks.
750
Thanks, Katie,
National
for
Guard
fucking
members,
Nazi.
along with 250 state and transit police officers, will patrol the platforms and check bags for weapons, joined by teams of mental health workers. The deployment comes after a subway conductor's throat was slashed just last week. Our station WABC was there when that conductor met the doctor who was on the train and saved his life.
God bless you. You're a good man. My angel.
Just today we learned of another attack.
Oh, so he lived? They didn't show his face, but yeah, it looked like he got cut there.
A conductor hit by a bottle. She's going to be okay, David. And the police believe many of these crimes are being committed by repeat offenders, so the governor...
How do they have access to the conductor, man?
...is trying to figure out some way to prevent them from riding. David?
Aaron Katursky reporting from New York tonight. Aaron, thank you. We turn now to that United flight from Houston to Fort Myers. Passengers hearing a loud bang just after takeoff, then seeing flames shooting out of one of the engines. The passenger jet violently shaking, the pilots forced to turn back. Here's ABC's Matt Gupp.
Tonight, that midair scare, a passenger filming as flames shoot out from the engine of a United plane on its way to Fort Myers, Florida.
I was texting my family and I didn't know what was going to happen. So I was just telling them that I loved him very much.
United Airlines flight 1118 taking off from George Bush International Airport.
Imagine being like the asshole and being like, guys, I always hated you. I'm glad I'm dying. And then you live. Totally not
Texas,
something I would do.
Around 6:30 p.m. Monday. Minutes later, passengers hearing a loud bang and feel violent shaking.
Panic set in with a lot of people. A lot of the people around me were screaming and crying.
David Gruninger taking this video, the orange flames erupting from the engine. The pilot telling air traffic control there are 167 people on board.
We've got both engines. One of them just had a surge or stall.
The aircraft landing back in Houston less than an hour later. Emergency crews waiting on the tarmac. In a statement tonight, United saying the plane experienced an engine issue, adding the flight landed safely and the passengers deplaned normally. David, United said that no one was hurt and it secured a new plane to take the passengers to Fort Myers that evening. The FAA says it's now investigating the incident, the latest involving a 737, and that plane, David, is due back in the air tomorrow.
Matt Gutman reporting tonight. Matt, thank you. We turn now to the race for the White House, and tonight after Super Tuesday, a big night for Donald Trump. Governor Nikki Haley today bowing out of the race. It is now a Biden-Trump rematch. Governor Nikki Haley congratulating Donald Trump today, but not endorsing him. And tonight, President Biden reaching out to Haley's supporters. And the president's high-stakes moment, his speech, his State of the Union in front of the country tomorrow night, with Donald Trump ahead of Biden in the polls. Here's Rachel Scott.
Tonight, Donald Trump's lone remaining Republican challenger calling it quits.
I said I wanted Americans to have their voices heard. I have done that.
Nikki Haley congratulating Trump, but not endorsing him. Instead, urging the former president to heed the message of her supporters, who have serious reservations about another Trump term. Exit polls show 79% of Haley voters would be dissatisfied with Trump as the Republican nominee. 79% also say he would be unfit for office if convicted of a crime.
It is now up to Donald Trump to earn the votes of those in our party and beyond it who did not support him. And I hope he does that. At its best, politics is about bringing people into your cause.
What a
President
bunch of
Biden
just
quickly
posturing
promising
bullshit,
Haley's
dude.
supporters
Just say you're going to support his ass.
saying,
That's it. That's
I know
all you
there's
gotta
a
do.
lot we won't agree on, but on the fundamental issues of preserving American democracy, on standing up for the rule of law, on preserving NATO, and standing up to America's adversaries, I hope and believe we can find common ground. Trump now the de facto Republican nominee, predicting the party will come together.
And we're going to have unity, and it's going to happen.
Well, no
very quickly.
shit, dude.
Today, one of the last remaining Republican leaders falling in line. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell hasn't spoken to Trump in 3 years,
the bad guy
publicly
from
blaming him
fucking
for
Red
January
Dragon.
6th.
There's no question, none, that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day.
But today, McConnell
Morally
endorsing Trump,
responsible
saying
for
it should come as no
provoking the
surprise
events.
that as nominee, he will have my support. Reporters pressing the senator on how he could condemn Trump in 2020 and endorse him now.
I said in February of 2021, shortly after the attack on the Capitol, that I would support President Trump if he were the nominee of our party, and he obviously is going to be the nominee of our party.
Donald Trump has attacked Mitch McConnell for years, even using racist insults to mock his wife, who once served in the Trump administration. Now the former president thanking McConnell for that endorsement, saying he looks forward to working together. David.
This rematch now underway. Rachel Scott tonight, thank you. Let's get right to our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, also with us here tonight. And Mary, President Biden, this high-stakes moment tomorrow night before the nation, the State of the Union address. The president knows this, the White House knows this. The stakes could not be higher.
They could not. And you've already seen the president there reaching out to Haley's supporters. David, this is a pivotal moment for President Biden, and this White House and his campaign know it. Trailing in the polls to Donald Trump and facing those persistent concerns and questions about his age, the president tomorrow night has to sell skeptical voters on his accomplishments and show the American public that he is still up for another.
You know, it's funny to me that we often talk about oh shit, I'm on hour 2? No way. Man, I'm tired. It's not even midnight yet. Alright, so I'm gonna bring this up. Trump, no, I can't I swear to God, I need a better KVM. I think I got too many things plugged in or something. Trump. Vote. No, that's over here. Okay, I need to go back to my history. And then over here, there's a video that I want to play. Vote, and then Trump, I guess, is what I'll type in. Where is it? They asked this dumbass if he thought he was losing or something. God, that's going to bring up too many videos. Oh man, I forgot that he wants to build the Iron Dome over the United States. Oh, what an idiot. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh man, I can't find the video. Does that pull up? No? Trump on voting? No. Dude, why are these videos from like not that long ago? I don't know, man. There was a what the hell? The prophecy, the evangelical vote for Trump. Yeah, that was a kind of a wacky one. But it's funny because you get all these like liberals that are like Trump's not or Biden's not losing. It's just the polls. The polls that you're looking at aren't the right polls. You should be looking at the right polls, because if you were looking at the right polls, then you would know that Donald Trump, that Joe Biden's actually winning. And if you knew anything about politics, you would know that if you look at the right polls, then you're going to know that these fake polls that are out there are going to tell you, that Joe Biden's not winning, but they sound a lot like this guy.
President, are you concerned about your internal polling as it relates to Joe Biden?
No, because we have great internal polling.
Hold on. I got to get, there we go. Auto-generated. And then crank this up a little bit.
Polling. They were fake polls that were released.
They're fake polls.
By somebody that it's ridiculous. No, we are winning in every single state that we've polled. We're winning in Texas very big. We're winning in Ohio very
This is exactly what Democrats sound like right now when they talk about Joe Biden.
big. We're winning in Florida very big. They were fake polls that were either put out by the corrupt media, because much of the media in this country, unfortunately, is corrupt. I have to tell you that, Mr. President. And some of it is excellent, but some is very bad. Those are fake numbers. But you know when you're going to see that? You're going to see that on Election Day. On Election Day, you're going to see. It was the same thing. I had the same thing.
You're going to see it on Election Day. Everybody's going to turn out for Joe Biden.
I had the same thing for a long period of time in 2016. I was getting these terrible poll numbers, and I didn't see it. because I'd have tremendous crowds, and my
Barack Obama was doing really bad in 2012, but then he won anyway. His polling numbers were really bad, but he won. The polling numbers didn't look that great, but Barack Obama still won. And if he did that, then Joe Biden, doing the same thing. He's he's doing the old sucker punch. He's bringing you in, and then he's gonna knock you out. That's what he's doing.
Opponent would have almost nobody. And I said, I think we're going to win the state of Michigan. We did. I think we're going to win the state of Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and we won them all.
Yeah, I think he lost all of these in 2020. Anyway.
And now I have the same stuff. They're giving out phony polls. No, these are polls that we have that nobody saw. We do very little polling because I'm not a huge believer in polling. I think you go out there.
That's the other thing you hear from Democrats is like, you can't believe the polls. I don't even believe in polls anymore. Like, these polls are non-existent to me.
And you fight, and you don't really need polls. You need ideas more than polls.
Yeah, you need ideas.
But we have some internal polling, very little, and it's unbelievably strong. The strongest I've ever been is exactly today.
Some of your advisors say there is concern. Is that inaccurate?
No, they're not advisors. It's fake news. You don't understand what I'm saying. Those advisors don't exist. They don't exist. It's made up by the newspapers. It's fake news.
Mr. President,
they don't exist. What the fuck does that mean? Anyways, I guess get ready for the next 4 years of that bullshit.
4 years on the job. Now, I'm told he will reflect on his record and hit on some of the biggest challenges that are being posed to his campaign, issues like immigration and the economy. Now, no word yet on whether he's going to call out Trump directly by name, but this is likely to be one of the biggest audiences the president has all year. His best chance to make his case and change perceptions before the general election. David, no question, the pressure's on.
Mary Bruce live at the White House tonight. Mary, thank you. And of course, we will be here for the President's State of the Union address tomorrow night and the Republican response right after. I hope you'll join us beginning at 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night, right here on ABC. We continue with the news tonight, and overseas here this evening, did Russia target Ukrainian
I think I'm pretty
President
tired,
Zelensky?
honestly. Yes, Zelensky almost died. In my opinion, I wouldn't be surprised to see Zelensky die this year or next year in a similar event. If they got this close, I can only imagine what else might be prepared. It seems like Yemen actually killed 3 people. I'm going to say that's a whoops. They've made it clear that they don't want to kill people on those ships. But hey, let's see what we have to say here.
The Houthi missile attacks aimed at commercial vessels and U.S. Navy ships have happened almost daily at one of the world's busiest and most important shipping routes.
So yeah, they've been bombing ships, and then the U.S. has been bombing them out of Djibouti, basically. So that's been going back and forth for a very long time. I would say, a couple months now? I guess it's not a very long time. Might be a few months, but I do remember about 2 weeks ago or a week ago, the White House representative saying that we, as in the United States, have run at least 32 sorties over Yemen, dropping bombs. So that continues to happen. They continue to target ships. They sank the Ruby Mar, which took about a week and a half to sink. And was filled with fertilizer. Something happened to the internet cables that are buried underneath in the Red Sea. So, yeah, a bunch of really wacky events that aren't really being talked about too much.
For now, this is the only plan the U.S. has to go after those Houthi missiles, but they don't appear to be running out of missiles anytime soon, David.
Martha Raddatz with us here tonight. Martha, thank you. To the other news here this evening, the mysterious...
Yeah, they don't appear to be running out of missiles because they have, if not tens of thousands, probably at least 150 or 200,000 missiles. So that's quite a lot. They've been fighting, Yemen has been fighting Saudi Arabia for quite some time. I was talking about that pretty often. That news seems to have faded. I haven't really been talking about it a lot. I think I talked about it this last week. But yeah, they can extend that. They've been bombed for the last 9 years, guys. Like, what do you think is going to make a difference in bombing them repeatedly here? I haven't seen anything change. If anything, we've made the situation worse because even less ships are going through the Red Sea. So that seems to be a major problem. Anyway, I am fairly tired. The world news tonight was okay. We really need to zoom in on this issue right here because they're in no way know how,
except when they
should
don't.
The Democratic Party be funding far-right fascists such as Donald Trump, and I think we end up in situations because of that. Anyways, I am tired. I will see. I'll probably be back Friday.